Rank the albums.
Pulp started out much sooner than people realize, unless you're aware how soon Pulp started out. This first album is quite far from their later brand, but you can still recognize it a bit, and obviously there's a distinctive voice, Jarvis being the only constant member of the band. The acoustic crooning of this record sets it quite close to Echo and the Bunnymen. I guess starting with a track called My Lighthouse sounds like a parody of My Kingdom that exaggerates the Bunnymen's seafaring theme, but this actually came sooner. This is good, it's just not very Pulp. The tone isn't in place yet. There's some, happy songs, but yeah, surprisingly solid start. We then go a few years and a full band except for Jarvis recast forward. With the new cast comes a new sound, a new outlook. Gothic is the word, but it's not specifically like any other gothic music of the time. Really, a more definitive property is the offness to the sound. They're not really trying to be in tune. What was once a kind of quirky naivety is now an intentional grotesquerie. Though we're approaching the canon Pulp vibe and encountering some good songs along the way, I can't much advocate this one. Which also means the compilation of singles from that kind of period, mostly original tracks, only a little crossover with the album, is kind of the same but worse. They elected to leave one B-side off this disc due to its tunelessness, but really if that's the grounds, this could have been quite a bit shorter. But still, some stuff to enjoy. Masters of the Universe also exists as the second disc to some more recent expanded edition of Freaks, and it's probably welcome enough in that format. I just can't really advocate it as an individual album. Then things really pull into focus for Separations. There's now the influence of dance music, which you'd often expect to be a bad thing, but it really worked on Pulp. They incorporate its tropes into songs with actual structure, and everything great about Pulp is slotting into place. The only part of this that hasn't aged as well is its toy-like instrumentation, but it's still quite cute. I think it's only their label status rather than the quality of the music that gets this written off as part of the prelude decade of Pulp, because to me it's very welcome. Another compilation of singles and their B-sides as Pulp get into gear for the big leagues. On the A-sides, they are ready to conquer the world. It's very refined and intentional. Outside of that, it's a lot more experimental. I think it's only the non-album format that holds its bet from the top of the pile thus far. It does have the same number of tracks as Separations. It's just not quite as holistic a product. It's nearly there. It's the same quality of music. Now we're going big, i.e. the ones I have big expanded editions of.
These deluxe editions throw in some excellent stuff.
Referring just to the album itself, though, His and Hers realizes what Pulp we're building toward. It's beautiful and insightful and gentle and probing at the same time. The band have grown into the right shape. Maybe they were already the right shape in the previous two, but now the product they make is perfected.
His and Hers ain't gonna come out on top in this list, but it needs special mention for how they nailed the sound, this airy, inquisitive vibe. Pulp's sound continued to move on, but here it's at its most idiosyncratic.
And then there's the real zeitgeist-grabbing album. I have an instinct to put this one down a little because of its relative obviousness. But really, that obviousness is just being right on message. This takes Pulp forward. They become more dark, more playful, more fun, more epic, more essential. It feels honest and not just populist to call this the best one yet. Maybe it's honest and populist. That's fine too. And any self-loathing success comes with a dingy aftermath. And this is ultimately their best product. Maybe it only works with the context of the other ones, but here you've got Pulp at the top of their game and starting to doubt the game. The cynicism they've grown towards is very becoming of Pulp, and it's just the most insightful intellectual set thus far. Quite possibly the best album ever with a naked teenager on the cover. And now the last one for Pulp. This is often praised as a mature wind down. I'm not that into it. There's an autumnal and rambling vibe that is honestly where Pulp were at the time, but I find it makes for less important music. They're still riding the wave of their creative peak, it's just ramping down. Maybe I find the title too unrelatable. It's still worthwhile pulp, but it's still shades of great pulp, there's just less of it. Now I've got some Jarv products that don't have the name Pulp. I'm following Jarvis on this because he was a consistent band member of Pulp, and that's how this series generally works. I try and follow the main creative contributor.
Things that feature Jarvis are usually brilliant.
He didn't even use his real name for a relaxed muscle, so I don't know if it's that fair to include this in this video, but I'm doing it. This is a whimsical, silly, and horny set of, nearly electro-clash pieces. It feels like it was written quickly, it's got that energy to it, but it's also disposable because of that. Nothing particularly essential, but nothing wrong, it's still compelling.
I'm not gonna be picky enough to include the Harry Potter songs, I'm gonna be picky enough to exclude them.
Jarvis' solo gets a bit songwritery. He had every right to get songwritery. I guess technically most songwriters are songwritery. To me this feels like the same kind of thing as Pulp, but just less good, less energized, less pulpy. So you know what you're getting, and he does that well, but it doesn't bring much that's particularly new. The second album did the right thing and brought this ramshackle Steve Albini energy to it. I guess we're again proximate to the tacky sound of relaxed muscle, and that's a good thing to tune into. But I feel that the songwriting doesn't much hold up on this one. And you kind of need the songwriting. There is a great one in the middle, but generally not so into this one. This is a promo release that will apparently trace any unauthorized use, so try and find me. You don't know who I am, please subscribe.
Both solo album sessions boast some superior B-sides. Likely Stories ain't on CD, and being a small soundtrack product, it's not an obvious inclusion in this list. The music justifies it, except the song about fungus covered in spittle, but this is basically a single, really. This one's quiet and weird, mostly just the sound of a piano and the insides of Jarvis's mouth. He's in this clever beat poet mode that does nothing for me. Every track does that same nothing, and they don't even all have Jarvis to bring them any content. You might like it if you want to hear uninspired piano doodling and gaps. Maybe this is the flaw of the idea of ranking the albums, as this is clearly a different genre, so maybe I'm judging it by the wrong standards. I'm just more into good music.
Now, it kind of feels like a solo reboot, but I guess it's just a band that happens to have his name. Worry about that later, because the music and the writing here has found a very welcome new form. No longer an aftershock of Pulp, he's applying his talent to new ideas. Kind of anthropological ideas, and the music matches that. There's a bit of a Nick Cave vibe to this. Because it's a modern album, it has just 7 long tracks, but that really works here.
It combines the rules of dance with live instruments, making for a suitably primitive yet inventive sound.
I think this is the right choice for a middle-aged Jarvis, and it's pretty promising for going forward as well. Speaking of going forward,
this is inherently a curio, spending Wes Anderson's soundtrack budget on a full length of chanson covers that got about 4 seconds airtime in the film. It's got the requisite elegance but zero innovation. The very concept of the project holds it low among an album rank, and it's not even an especially good example of what it is. This is a soundtrack that combines the sophisticated instrumentation of Jarvis with the noir drama of This Is Going to Hardcore. It's only the soundtrack nature that makes it any less for product, but this is still great content. There's a creative renaissance in these post-solo works, excluding the Dullard collaborator. It shows that Jarvis is far from out of ideas, and if anything, now freer from the rules of Pulp. Let's not forget the band, though. Behind those biting, prurient lyrics, they whipped up this initially sarcastically plasticky sound that could never hide its depths for long. A clinical aesthetic to set the scene, then swooping into baroque majesty anyway. The musical shape of the band is quite unique and makes it a perfect backing for his bassy whisperings. Pulp are easily one of the best things from British culture ever.